My name is Bertha Mae Newman. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, October the 12th, 1920. And I was born in a house on Airways Boulevard. It was just a two-lane road. But anyway, it was a Bethel Grove community. And just like a little village or town on the outskirts of Memphis. So that was a long time ago. I was born in Memphis, and I've lived here all my life and seen many changes. And the area where I grew up was at that time in the county, and it was on Airways Boulevard. And at that time, it was a two-lane road, and the streetcar turned around at Parkway and Lamar, which was quite a ways from where I lived. But we had to walk there to the end of the line, you know, to catch the streetcar to go into town. So much has changed since then. When I was growing up, Memphis was more like, I think, a small town atmosphere. We walked just about everywhere because, you know, we had automobiles, but not everyone had one, and we had one, but my father went to work every day in his car. You know, that left my mother and myself to find our way as best we could, which was usually to walk. But it was just a whole different atmosphere. But we were not really afraid to walk anywhere. I mean, we felt perfectly safe day or night walking anywhere. So that was really, you know, a help to us to be able to feel that way and be able to move around the way we wanted to. My main interest really was going downtown to Main Street. That was really the most exciting thing that I did in my young life, and because everything was downtown. We had the movies downtown, we had Cossett Library, and I always loved to go there and get books to read. And Saturdays were the day that we went downtown. That was our entertainment for the week. We would walk to the car line, get on the bus, it's 7 cents one way. We would ride downtown, get off on Main Street, and spend our days on Main Street that day, you know, from one end of the street to the other. And it was just, for us, you know, the highlight of our week and the highlight of our life, really. That's where everything centered at that time. I met my husband when we were very young, and I was in junior high school. He was in high school. But we walked home from Fairview Junior High School. A group of us in our neighborhood walked home every day. And I was walking home one day, and he was walking with another boy that I knew, but I didn't know who he was. I'd never seen him before. But they walked on one side of the street, and we walked on the other. And I didn't even know he knew I existed. But it wasn't long before he came to my house and invited me to a party at his house. So, and that's really how we got acquainted, was my going to his house to that party. And that was when we were very young. I was still in junior high school. He was a year or two older than me, 2 years, I think. He went to other schools. You know, I went to a different school. When I was in school, high school, I went to Whitehaven, and he went to Tech. So we actually didn't go to school together, and really, didn't start really dating until later on, and I just knew who he was and knew him. But anyway, that was the beginning of our friendship at that time. And as years went by, we started dating and married when we were young. We married when I was 18 and he was 20. So he graduated from high school in, I believe, 37, and I graduated in 38. And we married in 39. So that was the beginning of our life together. My husband's parents had a tourist home on Lamar. That was before motels, and when people traveled, which they didn't do much traveling in those days, but if they did, they usually stopped in a tourist home. But anyway, they had plenty of room, and so we lived there for the first, I think, 3 years of our marriage. And then after that, we bought a house, and but he had, in the meantime, in his first year out of high school, he was offered a job working with a photographer, and George Haley was the photographer's name, and he was a commercial photographer. And he was offered a job with him, and he started there just doing chores for him. But he learned photography, really, from George Haley, and he liked it, and his parents really wanted him to go on to college, but he got so interested in that, and that's just, he wanted to do that, you know, he just got interested and made that his career. So from then on, that's what he did, was photography. He did commercial, all commercial and industrial photography when he worked there. And as it happened, George Haley was really training him. And at that time, they used the 8x10 cameras. And they had to take those cameras, you know, and all the equipment with them on every job. And every one they went to was different. So sometimes it took a lot of lights and equipment and everything. At other times it wasn't that much, but George Haley really trained him in that work. And George wanted to take a trip around the world, and he really concentrated on training Don so that he could take over his business while he was gone. But as it turned out, that really didn't work out, and Don was offered another job with Memphis Engraving Company. So he changed and went to Memphis Engraving and did the same type work there, of just regular commercial and industrial photography, and was there until he went into service during the war. He went into the Air Force and went through training, but as he was ready to start his flying, he had to have a thorough medical exam, and they found that he had trouble with his lungs. So they said he could not do the high altitude flying. So he had to give up on that. Then he was given a medical discharge. Came back to Memphis and went right into work again in photography. And this time he went to work for Frank Hitchings and worked with him until Frank Hitchings retired. And then he took over his business and worked in that. And then at one time he had a partner that worked with him. until he had a heart attack and passed away. But Don was in all of his life, that's what he did, was commercial and industrial work. They had opened a studio on Claybrook, and then the expressway was put through on Claybrook. It took over Claybrook Street and that section of it. So they moved to a studio out in Whitehaven that was right at the intersection of the 55 and I-240. It was located right near that intersection. And that's where he worked until he retired. So he was in it many years. I went with Don a lot of times when he, especially at nighttime photography. And my daughter would tell you that a lot of times he would take pictures of the windows on the department stores at night. They would change their windows, you know, every so often, and they would want photographs of those windows. So he would go down on Main Street at night after the stores closed, and I would go with him, and we'd take our daughter with us, and she'd go to sleep on the back seat until we started home, and then we had to stop somewhere for something to drink or ice cream. But as far as going with him out of town on some of his out-of-town trips, I didn't do that. I didn't travel with him. He did some traveling. And but mostly it was his work centered in Memphis and the territory around Memphis. Well, my daughter's name is Donna Jean Newman, and she grew up with her daddy in photographic work and doing, from a child, you know, that was the center of our life, was all of his work and what he did. And of course he took a lot of pictures of her, and I have many pictures of her. I have many pictures, period, of everyone, you know, that was centered in his life. And I don't know, it was just a lifetime of photography and everything that went with it. I worked in the studio with him several times. And I mainly did the office and answered the calls and kept the books and all of that. And I really enjoyed doing that because we had a variety of people who came in all the time. And it was interesting, and I really enjoyed it. He did take a lot of pictures of Memphis buildings, and some that have been torn down, which was really a disaster, we thought. And but we hated to see it happen. But Memphis went through a period of modernizing everything, and some of the buildings, of course, needed much repair or something, and they would just tear them down and rebuild on the sites, which really changed the landscape quite a bit. And of course, I know everybody knows about Cosset Library. They changed the face of that. And they tore down Union Station, which was really a disappointment to just about everyone in Memphis, because it was just a place that was unusual. It was beautiful to look at, and we just hated to see it torn down. But I think that when they started tearing down the homes on Union Avenue, it finally reached a point where people realized, I think, what was happening here. And they really kind of organized then to try to save Memphis buildings and the Memphis landscape. And June West came into the picture. And I think June deserves a lot of credit for all that she did. She really was the instigator of a change in attitude, I think, in Memphis about respecting older buildings and older sites in Memphis. And I think it's continued now. She has really achieved a lot in all that she's done. I think she deserves a lot of credit from the people of Memphis for saving as many places as she has. And she's just dedicated herself to that and has made quite a change. Don took these pictures of the buildings in Memphis, but he started taking them, I think, in the 40s. So it was really the way that it used to be. I mean, the buildings were still in their original state. As time went on, they changed, and you know, they would modernize some or change the face of them or do something, and then, but his business, he worked for architects here in Memphis and took a lot of pictures of buildings in Memphis, just, I think, almost all of them, really, over a period of time. And he really saw such a change in Memphis, and it really bothered him because he hated to see everything change the way it did. And he took those pictures of Main Street because he felt like it would be changing. They were talking about so much change in downtown and Main Street. So he was really dedicated to preserving a lot of the places in Memphis that we hoped would never change, but eventually so many of them did. And it was in his work, but also he took a lot of the pictures for his own motivation in preserving the looks of the way Memphis, you know, had always looked. So most of his life was spent in photography and photographing everything about the city of Memphis. That a lot of things were unimportant, but a lot of things were very important. So I'm very proud of what he did. I feel like Memphis recognizes it too now. Memphis Heritage contacted me after Don passed away because they knew something about his pictures, you know, and ones that he had made of Main Street and some of the others that they had seen and were interested in. So they contacted me about using Don's negatives for Memphis Heritage to promote Memphis Heritage and the work they were doing, you know, to preserve Memphis and the buildings and everything about Memphis that they were interested in. And they knew that he had pictures of everything in Memphis, just about. I mean, he had covered Memphis thoroughly. So I was glad to have them take those negatives and to work with them because I knew that Don would have really appreciated that. And he would have approved of them having the negatives and working with them because he knew that they were really sincere in improving the image of Memphis and preserving Memphis, what it could be saved. They realized the importance of doing that, and I was glad that I could let them have those negatives to work with, and they have certainly done a wonderful job. all that they have done, and I appreciate everything they've done. And I know Don would have loved it. He would really have appreciated all that. I hope they'll be used to further Memphis and the publicity about Memphis. And I just hope that everything that is preserved and kept will be taken care of, you know, and people will learn from it and learn that Memphis is really a wonderful place to live and raise a family. And I think that it's just something that we should all, you know, be interested in doing. I just think that in the years that have passed since his death, that he would have been so pleased to know that people were interested in keeping Memphis as a welcoming place and a place where people could come and enjoy themselves. And it's so good that they have been able to restore Beale Street, and the atmosphere of that, I think, is known, you know, all over the nation. They know about Beale Street. And I just think there's different things in Memphis that are so interesting should be made known to people in ways that can be made known through publicity and the pictures that have been preserved and shown. And I'm just hopeful that Memphis will have a wonderful future. I would love to be able to be here and take part in all that. And I just hope that Memphis will always be a place of happiness and prosperity and a place that people will love and enjoy living. I think it would be interesting, it was to me, and I think it would be interesting to anyone interested in photography to know the process that he went through in building his business and building his interest in photographic work. And to him it was a pleasure. He loved doing it, and he really, I think he was hopeful that people would enjoy and looking and I don't know, he just had a interest in everything that was concerning Memphis. And in his work, I think he came in contact with so many people and of all different interests and work, and it was always a pleasure for him to enjoy these different experiences he had and going about his work. And I enjoyed hearing about it and working in the studio part-time. When he needed me, I would help him. And I really enjoyed doing it because it wasn't like a regular job. I mean, it was always interesting things that interesting people coming in and talking to him and about his work and all. And it was just, I think it was an ideal business for him. It was exactly what he would have liked and what he did like and he did enjoy.